Hi everybody, my name is Anya, and in this video I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to be talking about a movie that was released 80 years ago in the year 1941. Now this is a movie that has a big reputation. I'm not kidding. It is considered the greatest movie to ever be released, and that is saying something. I actually had the opportunity to watch this movie when I was in my second year at university. I was doing a class called Film History and Theory, and for that class we had to watch several different movies. Now this was the movie that certainly took everybody by surprise. Put it like this, on the day we were watching it in class, we were all sitting in the dark, transfixed, staring at the screen. No one was moving, nobody was talking, nobody even had their phone underneath their desk secretly messaging. That's how much this movie impacted us. So today, I want to talk about the legacy of Rosebud and the story of the movie that's become known as Citizen Kane. In order to know more about Citizen Kane, we need to take a look at the man behind it, Orson Welles. Now, who was Orson Welles? George Orson Welles was born on the 6th of May 1915 in Washington, the United States, the only child of Richard and Beatrice Welles. From a very young age, he did not have it easy. His parents would separate several times and his father would develop a drinking problem. When Orson Welles was just 9 years old, his mother died of hepatitis, and for the next few years, he and his father would travel around through Jamaica and the Far East. They never settled down one particular place for a long period of time. Orson Welles would be the first to admit that he'd never had a normal, steady childhood. In 1926, he was enrolled at the Todd Seminary for Boys, and that is where he would hone his craft in theatre and production. When he was 15 years old, his father would succumb to his alcohol addiction, so 15 years old, Orson Welles was left alone. He had to look out for himself. In 1931, he would leave the Todd Seminary and he would begin travelling around the world. Orson Welles, believe it or not, would actually begin his theatre career in the Gate Theatre in Ireland, and he would perform there in amateur productions for several years before moving to Chicago. And for the next 36 weeks in Chicago, he would perform in not one, not two, but 3 theatre productions all at the same time. That just shows his commitment to theatre. In 1935, he would sign on to a radio production with CBS Radio. He would work there quietly for the next couple of years, until 1939, when he came under notoriety for his radio performance of The War of the Worlds.
Their origin or their purposes here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to the mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute non-conductivity. This intense heat they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose by means of a polished parabolic mirror of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carl Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now here's another bulletin from Washington, D.C.
It has to be taken into account that The War of the Worlds was nothing more than a fictional story that had been written by author H.G. Wells. All Orson Welles was doing was reading out a story on the radio, but he had the talent to convince listeners that the world was going to be invaded by aliens. That's how convincing he was as an actor. In 1939, Orson Welles would sign a 63-page contract with RKO Radio Pictures. That contract would oblige him to write, produce, direct, and perform for the company. So he was offered 3 different proposals for movies to produce and direct. He rejected the first 2 proposals, but he chose to accept the third. and that proposal would become known as Citizen Kane. Now please forgive me for sounding like the song, but Orson Welles had the power over this film. He was the one who developed the story without any interference, he was the one who selected the cast and the crew, and he was the one who had the rights over the final cut of the film. Citizen Kane is a fictional biographical film about a business tycoon called Charles Foster Kane. The movie revolves around the mystery of his final word, Rosebud.
I made no campaign promises because until a few weeks ago, I had no hope of being elected. Now, however, I have something more than a hope. And Jim Geddes has something less than a chance. Every straw vote, every independent poll shows that I'll be elected. Very well then. Now I can afford to make some promises.
The mystery of the word Rosebud is the main theme of the film. The meaning behind the word would not be revealed until the very end. Orson Welles would play the main character of Charles Foster Kane, and many have said that this character is actually based off of Welles himself. Both men have very similar personalities and they both had quite difficult childhoods. Both lost their mothers at very young ages, taken away from what they were used to. They both had to grow up very, very fast. So it's not surprising that a lot of people see Orson Welles as a main focus, the main basis for Charles Foster Kane. Orson Welles would never confirm this theory, but interesting note, I will say that. Citizen Kane would have its world premiere at the Palace Theatre in 1941. From there, it would be released to multiple audiences all across America. It did well financially in large towns and cities, but less so in the smaller areas. But where it failed financially, critically, the movie exploded. The Observer would go on to describe Citizen Kane as the greatest movie to come out of Hollywood from the last 25 years. So that is saying something in itself. The movie was nominated for 9 Academy Awards in 1942, but only won for Best Original Screenplay, which many people thought as ridiculous. So while the movie ran its course in the 1940s, in the years since then, the movie has been described as probably the most highly rated movie of all time. It was certainly what led Orson Welles to have a very successful career in film and cinema. He would continue acting, producing and directing multiple projects until his death in 1985. On a personal note, this is just me saying it. He is my favourite Mr. Rochester. I recommend watching the 1943 version of Jane Eyre. You'll see what I mean. For 80 years, Citizen Kane would have a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, but unfortunately this year in 2021, a 80-year-old negative review would tarnish that rating. Believe it, an 80-year-old review would tarnish it after so long. But now Citizen Kane has, and that's very sad, a 99% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh well, could have been worse. Nevertheless, despite that little blip, Citizen Kane has gone on to be described as one of the most widely acclaimed films of all time, and many people have said that it will go down in history as the greatest movie ever made.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this great honor, may I say that it's a lot more fun to look forward. Looking backward over some 30 years in the movies is something that I like to do as seldom as possible, but I can't forget that I didn't spend those years alone. Every filmmaker knows how much was done for him and by how many. If I could call just half of all those who deserve it to stand beside me now in front of this camera just to get them in one shot, we'd need Cinerama. It'd be quite a crowd scene.
Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in my next video where I'll be discussing another movie. It's nowhere near as old as Citizen Kane, but the story behind it is definitely as old as time. if you get where I'm coming from. Until the next time, my name is Anya, and thank you for watching on this day.